This is a Sony a6100. It is not new, it doesn't have aim-body stabilization, it doesn't record 10-bit video, it doesn't have the AI autofocus chip that recognizes cars and birds and trains and Sasquatch, but it takes excellent photos, it shoots good-looking 4K video, the autofocus is incredible, and if I handed this camera to a great photographer, they could make photos with it that most of us would be thrilled to have in our own portfolios. But recently, I realized something. If I spend more than 10 to 15 minutes on YouTube, I start getting these video recommendations that tell me effectively that this camera is unusable. How can you shoot anything decent with only 8-bit video? It doesn't have OpenGate. It doesn't have a 10-way adjustable articulating screen. It has a low resolution viewfinder. All of your footage will look like absolute garbage because you don't have stabilization. And maybe that's the algorithm figuring out that I have some sort of deep-rooted gear lust that will never be satisfied, so I'm the perfect test subject for some of these possibly fringe camera YouTube videos, or maybe not. Maybe this is just the way things are now. And it's not that this camera got worse, it didn't, but everything around it got newer. And really in the last few months, I've been wrestling with this question. How many of the features that we are paying for in new cameras are solving real problems? And how many are making perfectly good cameras feel obsolete at an expedited rate, it seems? And I guess the bigger question is, how can I determine if a new camera feature is genuinely worth paying for, or whether I'm about to spend thousands of dollars solving a problem that really isn't one? And I'm not trying to stand on any type of hill judging anyone else for buying camera gear. I make camera videos for a living. If anyone is susceptible to this, that would be me, and it's called GAS, or Gear Acquisition Syndrome. It's a battle that I face every day between myself and my Amazon cart. Now, cameras are exciting, new lenses are exciting, and for me, even doing the research aspect, the pursuit, is just as fun as owning the thing. I do this with cars. Many of you know me as Hoovie's Garage. No, I'm joking, but it is almost like he is my brother, because I've had a passion for cars that rivals my passion for photography since probably the age of 10, from collecting Hot Wheels to building Lego cars and then buying my first car and spending thousands of dollars fixing it because I was making terrible mistakes while driving. I think that's why I can relate to Hoovie's decision making, but even in that, I'll buy some $4,000 piece of rolling garbage and invest 150 hours into restoring it, spending 2 or 3 times the price that I paid for it. And in the middle of it, I debate just giving up and junking the car, wondering what in the world I was thinking when I bought it. But somehow at the end, it always works out, and I feel incredibly accomplished when it's all done and the car is running well again. But then at night, I'm still browsing Facebook Marketplace looking for the next project. It's like I'm seeking my next punishing project that I'm going to regret purchasing as soon as I start diving deep into the issues. I don't need more projects, so why am I searching for them? And with cameras, it's similar for me. I watch the announcement videos, I watch some first impression videos, I watch some comparisons. And look, this new camera, for example, has 14.8% stickier autofocus than the predecessor. And I start to think, well, maybe I should buy this one and sell the camera that I just figured out a couple of weeks ago, or a few months ago, or maybe a few years ago. Should I embark on this new project of mastering an even bigger and more featured camera? Why does knowing that these new features in this new camera exist suddenly make my own camera feel inadequate? And then I'll start to think, well, maybe it will be a little bit more fun to use, so I'll use it more and I'll have better autofocus, so it'll be even easier to use, and it has a newer sensor, so it'll be that much better in really tough situations. And I pull the trigger and I buy it, and it comes to my doorstep, and I open it, and I'll be honest, it's really exciting for the first 2 or 3 weeks. Just like that new project car that I purchased, you have all these plans and all these ideas in your head. But when you get it, when the hype settles a little bit, things kind of return back to normal because I have the same level of experience. Nothing has changed. I have the same ideas, I'm in the same place, and I have to get off of my couch and get out of the house and find something that is worth photographing. So the gear itself changes, but I don't. And I think this is because when we buy camera gear, we rarely buy the feature. We buy this emotion of a possibility that is attached to the feature. We don't buy 100 megapixels because we urgently need 100 megapixels, at least usually. We buy the idea that we are about to go crazy and start cropping like no one's business and producing some stunning gallery prints. We don't go, okay, I'm going to buy a 6K 240 FPS camera because I regularly shoot high-speed action, but because we want to make the most cinematic slow motion video of, let's say, a dog running through a sprinkler that Instagram has ever seen. We don't buy better and better autofocus because our current autofocus is bad. We buy the idea that this newer camera will never again miss an important moment. And the camera companies are very good at selling this future version of us, the version of me who travels more, who shoots more, who gets better clients, who even gets a client, who makes more interesting work, who rivals the most elite of YouTube video phenomenons. But it doesn't happen. When I look back at the last 14 or 15 years of shooting photos and videos on this channel, off this channel, there's something interesting about it. First, the biggest improvements in my work, at least in my photography, did not line up with the dates that I bought a new camera or a full frame camera. In fact, most of the photos looked worse as I was trying to figure out how to use the new thing. And the second thing is some of my favorite photos were taken with lenses that were not even remotely special on paper. They were taken because I was somewhere special, or the lighting was good, or something happened in that moment and I happened to snap that photo before it was gone. The location mattered, the experience mattered, the repetition of composing and getting that understanding down mattered, and the gear mattered to an extent, but much less than I thought it would have, at least when I was hovering over that place order button on Amazon. Now, to be fair, camera upgrades used to solve some very obvious problems. In the beginning, it was the autofocus that just really wasn't fast and wasn't very reliable. Video quality was not good. You guys remember 480p. The battery life was pretty terrible in the beginning. Low light performance was pretty weak. Ergonomics, you could argue to this day, are not that great, but they were worse back in the day. There really is a long list of things that could have been improved and have been improved with most brands over the years. And you look at the models, there were significant changes between the models. You go from having bad autofocus to amazing autofocus. You go from 1080p to 4K. It's a huge improvement. You introduce eye autofocus, enormous feature. You solve the overheating issue. That's massive for people. These were easy improvements to understand because they were problems that normal photographers were experiencing constantly using these cameras. But since then, after the most obvious problems were mostly solved, the improvements started to become more specialized. That doesn't mean that they are bad features or that they are useless, but what I'm trying to say is I think, and again, this is just my opinion, that fewer people really need them. I think that's a distinction that gets lost every time we see a new camera gets announced. The reason I've been thinking about all of this is because Sony just released the FX5. I don't have one. I haven't used one, and this is certainly not any sort of review of it. In fact, I don't even want to get a loaner because it's far more camera than I need. It is an absurdly capable camera, and for the right filmmaker, an incredible tool. If you're shooting high-end commercial work or productions that need internal RAW, jobs where rolling shutter, timecode, professional audio, all of that affects your ability to get paid. I totally understand it. One job might completely justify the entire $5,000 price tag. And it's important that I say that because I don't want this video to be expensive camera bad, cheap camera good. The real question that I personally ask myself is, what problem does this expensive new camera solve for me? For me, the FX5 would probably spend all of its life pointed at my face like this while I talk about camera features that I'm not using. It would have internal XOCN recording of me sitting in this chair I could record open gate so I could have more flexibility when cropping myself sitting in this chair. And I could even record myself at 240 frames per second, slowly reaching and picking up a camera and lens on this table. Truly remarkable. But for someone else, these features are the difference between getting the shot and missing it. So the camera is really not the problem, but me assuming that every little specialized improvement matters to me is. I mentioned that I buy dirt cheap project cars. I don't know why I do it. Honestly, my wife gets mad at me every single time I pull up one of these heaps of garbage off of the trailer into the garage. And maybe it's because I'm price conscious. I like getting that deal, but just like those non-functioning shells of vehicles that I call my project cars, cameras and their features have multiple prices that are attached to them. Well, I would say 3 of them. First, you have the obvious sticker price. The faster sensor costs more money. The new AI super fast autofocus costs more money. The second price is the price of the system, or the system price. That is the price of the workflow. So for example, you buy a 100 megapixel camera and suddenly you need larger, more expensive memory cards, hard drives, computers even to process everything, a larger Google Drive subscription. And then the third price is the attention price. That is the time that you spend either researching, comparing, learning menus, playing with the settings, even thinking about camera gear is part of that price. I'm not saying that you should just go out there and not research anything and just buy whatever willy-nilly, but I will say that there is some inflection point where the tool that I bought consumes more creative energy than it gives me. And then if you narrow down to just features, let's talk about a stack sensor. A stack sensor can be a massive advantage when you are shooting sports or wildlife or fast action, or you don't want rolling shutter to do damage to your images or your videos. But if I mainly shoot, let's say, portraits or landscapes or photos of my family, some product shots where the products are not moving, what problem would the price of that stack sensor really solve? Or even, let's take 4K 240. It could be great for someone who regularly needs extreme slow motion, but do I need it? I can't even remember the last time I used 4K 60, let alone 120 or 240. Could I make a cool shot with 240 FPS? Probably. But have I repeatedly struggled to finish real work because my A6100 doesn't shoot 240 FPS? Those are very different questions. Even something like autofocus has reached this point. Better autofocus is always nice, but there is a difference between being better and being meaningfully better for me. Does my A6100 regularly miss the subjects that I photograph? Or am I buying into this new autofocus because some reviewer put 2 videos up on the screen side by side and slowed down the footage to 1/1000th of a second to show the frame by frame that one was slightly more confident than the other? I know some photographers have escaped this cycle, and you see it more and more on YouTube recently. They own a camera that might be 5 or 6 or 10 years old. They know how it behaves. They have learned its limitations. They've stopped caring about every single announcement, and they spend more time going out there and shooting than researching about the next greatest thing that they can buy. And I think that is a healthy place to reach. I'm curious if you guys have reached that point, so comment down below. If so, what is the camera that you are still happily using? Personally, this is what I am doing when it comes to upgrades. Really 3 things. First, I name the failure, not a hypothetical problem that I could one day encounter, but what shots am I missing? What part of my workflow is slowing me down? Is my current camera some type of bottleneck to me? For example, the A6000, when it came out, excellent camera, but quickly we discovered it overheats during long client interviews. That's a real problem if you are shooting long client interviews. Second, I proved that the problem repeats. So how often does a problem cost me something? Is it a daily thing? Is it once a month? Is it something that happens once every 3 years? Is it costing me time or money or frustration that is strong enough that I don't even want to use the camera? Because a small problem, that's kind of one of those things that nags you and nags you and nags you constantly, can justify an upgrade. But a big problem that happens intermittently, let's say once every 4 years, it's harder to justify buying something new just to fix that. And the last thing is I rule out a cheaper fix. Is a new camera or a new lens or this feature the simplest solution? Would something else solve it? Better lighting, a microphone, a different setting, maybe more practice. Is a new camera really the answer, or can it be solved by something else? Really, replacing the most expensive part of the system might be more exciting than simply fixing the problem through other means, but that's not always the correct or best solution. Now, some of you might simply just want to buy something. You don't need to write some sort of business proposal every single time you want to buy a lens or a camera, and you are allowed to buy something simply because you want to. And I have purchased many lenses that I did not need because I thought they were interesting, and I write them off on my taxes, and I enjoy using them, and I review them on this channel usually. And there is some value in buying something that makes you excited to go out and shoot. But you also have to be honest about these purchases. There is a difference between saying, I need this camera to become a better photographer, and I don't need this at all. I just think it's super cool. I can afford it, and I'm going to enjoy using it. And that second person usually is a lot less likely to regret the purchase. In the end, I think all of this is good news. The fact that camera companies are making specialized feature improvements means that the cameras themselves have become very, very capable. A 6 or 7 year old camera never stopped producing good images. Cheap lenses really are better than they have ever been in the past. Used cameras that were cutting edge just a few short years ago are now readily available online for pennies on the dollar. I mean, half the price, a quarter of the price even. If you are the type of person who doesn't care about owning the newest thing, there has probably never been a better time to be a photographer, because you can buy something, you can learn how to use it completely, and use it for years. If you are debating buying that new camera, I would encourage you to take the one that you already have and use it a couple of times. Pay attention to what gets in your way. If anything, maybe you need to write some notes down. And if there are real repeated problems, start looking for a solution. But if you come home with some photos that you are proud of, with no clear idea of what the camera prevented you from doing, then keep it. Spend the money on a trip where you will have the opportunity to take even better photos. A new camera can solve a real problem. It can save you time, or it can help you get paid or capture something that your existing camera can't, but it can't turn you into this future version of yourself that the marketing materials and the fancy edited promo videos show you. You don't become that photographer when that package lands on your doorstep. Unfortunately, I wish it happened that way, but it doesn't. You become that photographer by getting out there and shooting and practicing and looking and getting that eye for photography and using whatever it is that you already have. The camera companies can only sell you a slightly better camera. They can't sell you experience. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.